Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Top 10s.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastish B.
And welcome back. So on today's episode we're going to check out my top 10 favorite Commodore 64 releases of 2023. Like all the lists I've done previously over the last few years, this includes games from the beginning of 2022, December of 2022, right up to the beginning of December of 2023, just due to the time it takes to make one of these. And any Commodore 64 game that is released in the beginning to the mid of December 2023 will get their own individual reviews in January of 2024. I just don't simply have the time to play something enough to review it for this top 10. And with that out of the way, let's dive into this top 10. Devolution Global Warming was released at the beginning of December 2023 by Wendigo Productions, only their second C64 game, and what a unique play it turned out to be. It's a real-time strategy game, a genre that is pretty rare on the old C64. It employs elements of the classic game Mule and other original ideas, as you have to fight for survival in a post-apocalyptic world, forming bases, gathering survivors, looting for supplies, and conquering local towns and inserting your dominance over the whole map. You can simply play you against the computer, or you in a versus mode against a friend, or just mule it up and have up to 4 human players at once, giving it a real party atmosphere. There are 7 different maps to conquer with multiple difficulty settings, so if this style of game is not your usual thing, you'll still be able to get into it fairly easily. The best element of this game though is the speed and ease of play. Everything is simple joystick directions and one button to navigate. All the info is also displayed on one screen, streamlining the whole pace of the game. Gathering supplies, fortifying bases, looting towns, it's all really fun once you get the flow of it, which is very easy. The game is both PAL and NTSC compatible, has an awesome music soundtrack, and features a simple but well-defined graphic look and style, and even has a gorgeous physically boxed version available for pre-order as of making this video. And the best of all is the digital version is available for free, so there's really no reason not to check it out.
Number 9.
Space Station 23 was released on the Commodore 64 in April of 2023 by Vector 5 Games. This is a fast-paced action maze adventure game where you as Joe Phoenix, who seems to be the same character from one of Vector 5's previous C64 games called Jungle Joe. And if you've never played that, it's a great puzzle-style game that's totally worth looking at. In this game, you have to fly off to a space station that's been hit by an asteroid and attempt to repair it. And of course, wipe out all those pesky aliens who have infested it as well. It's a bit like Sega's Alien Syndrome, just with a bigger emphasis on puzzle solving. The game has both indoor and outdoor environments. When you first land, you have to make your way to the station on foot, but due to the planet's surface being so hot, you have to keep filling up on coolant to keep your suit cool. The main objective here is to collect everything, such as ammo for your gun, health, and different resources which are all needed to escape a level. And you can see how many you need on the right hand side on the HUD. Keycards are used for doors, and finding OS disks for computers reactivates them to help bring the station back to life. Aliens are all over the place to be blasted, but make sure you take out their gauntlet style generators first, otherwise they'll just keep on respawning. Ammo is also pretty limited, so you need to relax on that run and gun mentality and make every bullet count, Resident Evil style. Obstacles are all over the place, of course, to stop your progress. There's massive laser fields, debris, etc, etc. Big bombs can be used to blast past certain sections. You can use transporters to access new parts of a level, and of course backtracking is needed as you make your way around solving various puzzles. Overall, you have to progress through 10 stages of the station, including indoor and outdoor locations, with 240 rooms in total to explore. This is a really fun, well-made game that literally just came out of nowhere. I didn't know anything about it. It has good, simple graphics, easy to understand gameplay that's very rewarding, and a really great SID opening tune. Best part is it's available for free or name your own price from Vector 5 Games, and works on a real C64 as well as the Mini and Maxi. And I'll leave links in the video description for you to pick it up. Another solid, well-made C64 modern entry.
Number 8.
Newsstand was released in April of 2023 by AGPX and takes the form of an arcade adventure style game. It puts you in the role of a kid named Joseph who is trying to save up enough money to buy a new C64 cassette game from his local newsstand. The game is broken down into 5 stages, each requiring you to gather as much money as possible and solve various puzzles relating to all the crazy people that live in your neighborhood. The charm of this game is definitely the characters and how to overcome them. There's crazy people like Mark, who is a CD junkie and loves throwing them at you to try and kill you. Julian is a digital-only lover, and the guy who's always smashing CRT TVs. Andrew controls all the drones in the neighborhood, and there's also a demented Pepe Le Pew type girl who's in love with you, to deadly results. You have no proper weapons. You can simply jump to avoid obstacles and items chucked at you. Puzzles are solved through the environment and are very satisfying to figure out and complete. I like all the small touches everywhere. The part where you control a drone through all the air vents is really fun. The level with the rain using your umbrella against the wind. The funny characters and dialogue. It has a lot of charm and a bopping music score by the ever-reliable Richard Bayless. It has to be said that this game is hard as nails and is not for the easily frustrated. It has tough arcade segments, a strict timer, and restarting levels are all part of figuring out how each stage's puzzles and action works. It's a very cool game for the C64 made with a lot of passion. Ooze The Escape was released in May of 2023, coded by Haplo, based originally on a ZX Spectrum game from 2017. This, however, is a vastly updated version, with hugely improved high-res graphics, new areas to discover, extra animations, and a handy minimap to find your way around. In the game, you are a piece of slimy ooze that has to escape a lab you're currently a prisoner of. As the ooze, you can use your anti-gravity powers to jump onto roofs and obstacles to avoid death and figure out puzzles. You need to avoid the patrolling robots and chomper gates and so much more. You also need to find keys to using computers to disable force fields and gain access to new areas. The bottom right of the screen has a nifty little minimap, making figuring out the complex pretty easy to understand. It's a pretty tricky game at first and seems quite difficult, but patience and timing is your friend. If you take your time, it's a very cool and unique game to explore and enjoy. The game's music score is very good, it has some nice sound effects, and I really love the detailed high-res graphics, which look vastly superior to the ZX Spectrum version. It's another NTSC and PAL compatible release and a name your own price game, and is another C64 release you don't want to pass over.
Number 6.
Deathflood Dungeon of Doom was released on the C64 at the beginning of May of 2023 by Wendigo Productions. It's an action platformer set in a fantasy world where you as an avid adventurer hear about an abandoned castle that was once the home of a long-dead necromancer. This castle is supposedly filled to the brim with treasure for the taking. You make your way to the bottom and start plundering, but inadvertently set off a series of traps, and this is where the game starts, with your goal to make it up and back out the castle as it self-destructs, unleashing all its traps and monsters. As you're escaping, you also have to loot as much treasure as possible, which will determine one of the many multiple endings you'll receive. Deathflood is a welcome breath of fresh air on the C64, with a simple twist on regular gameplay. You have something very fun, challenging, and unique. The game lets you choose between 2 different characters, a barbarian and an Amazon, each giving you a slightly different gameplay experience, with the barbarian being slow, stronger, and having smaller jumps, and the Amazon having speed, weaker attacks, but longer jump distances. The choice is yours. Each of the 19 levels starts you off at the bottom of the screen as you try to scramble your way up to the top and reach an exit. The castle is flooding, so water is filling up, making you have to think fast, with most levels having multiple paths to take to reach the exit. You need to pick up keys to open doors, treasure to fill out your overall status, and fight many creatures you come across, or simply avoid them. If you get swallowed by the water, it's not instant death as well, as you have air in the form of a lung meter at the top of the screen, where you got time to grab a key or treasure underwater before popping back up, as long as air permits. Going over that means your health will start to drain, and inevitably it'll be your end. You have to think on your feet quickly, jumping over traps, deciding what treasures to take, and which creatures to attack or avoid. The castle has 3 distinct looks as you make your way up, coupled with many new monsters introduced along the way for a lot of variety. Considering this is Wendigo Productions' first C64 game, it is quite impressive, with lush, well-defined satisfying graphics that get better the further you get, great sound effects, and some extremely good SID tunes that really fit the mood of the game overall. It's pretty easy to play with mid-range difficulty. The more you play it, the better it gets in my opinion. The best part is the game is free for the digital download, with a gorgeous physical version being available from Polyplay, and the link to the digital version will be in the video description. It's both NTSC and PAL compatible, although it was designed for PAL systems, so if you're playing it through emulation, it's suggested you use PAL settings. It also features use for Protovision's Protopad to give it a bit more of a console type experience. Wendigo said that this game was inspired by old C64 classics such as Barbarian and Hero Quest, and those elements kick-started the idea as the game went into full production in 2020. Death Flood is a great experience, offering new elements to a basic genre, and is well worth the time spent with it.
Number 5.
Zeta Wing 2 was released on the Commodore 64 at the end of April 2023 by Witchsoft, programmer and designer Sarah Jane Avery's game-making brand. Zeta Wing 2 is the sequel to 2020's exclusive Commodore 64 vertically scrolling shooter, Zeta Wing. You again have to jump into your spaceship and blast your way through 7 levels of bug alien infestation landscapes to take out the alien queen. If you've played vertical shoot-em-ups before and grew up in the arcade, you're gonna feel right at home here. The game delivers that very satisfying action while still being fair without murdering you in 5 seconds. The game initially feels like the original in terms of graphics and levels, but after a few stages and upon reaching the giant fortress in the sky, it really starts to step things up a notch. Upgrades work the same as the original. Collecting stars boosts your firepower, which there are 12 levels of, and it really starts making you feel invincible after a while, in the best possible way, almost like a 90s toe plan arcade shoot 'em up. And also, if you lose a life, you only get downgraded by 1 level of firepower, so you never get destroyed like those old Konami titles, but can always go forward. A new addition here is the inclusion of a screen-killing smart bomb, which you can also assign to certain keys or an extra fire button. But I also like the option of being able to set it to auto, meaning if you take a bullet during action, it launches a bomb automatically, saving your life depending on how many you have. It's a cool idea. I remember first being used in Toplan's Tiger Heli in the 1980s, at least that's what I remember it from, and I always just love this idea. The multiple difficulty settings are also well implemented and really do feel more challenging without being ridiculous. Although I will say, if you are in any way decent at shoot 'em ups, don't select easy. It's way too easy. I literally completed it on my second go, but normal is extremely well balanced and is definitely the way to go. The graphics are pretty good overall. The beginning stages do feel like remixes of the original with nice parallax action, but the later levels really do start to impress with caves, airships, and enemy bases all looking really smart. Plus the addition of many new enemies are introduced later on, which are really visually appealing and offer up a really good challenge. Boss encounters though are the highlights for this game, with each one having multiple parts and transformations, giving the game a real arcadey feel, and I really enjoyed each and every encounter. The only slight complaint here really is the music, and it's not because it's bad by any means. It actually complements the fun vibe of the game really well, but I feel like I've heard it all before. Slight variations on Zeta Wing 1, Briley Witch, and even Soul Force. I mean, I do love a main theme that is repeated various times in different tunes, just like old movie soundtracks, but these feel more like tracks being repeated from other games. They all work well in context of the game, but hopefully Sarah's next game will have a nice fresh selection of original tunes. Overall though, this is another shoot 'em up gem on the C64 that delivers the goods. It's both NTSC and PAL compatible, and I played it on both Maxi and original hardware, and it played perfectly. And I'll leave links in the video description for you to download this awesome game. If you're a shoot 'em up junkie, you're gonna be well happy.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
SNK vs Capcom was released on the Commodore 64 at the end of September 2023, an unofficial conversion of the Neo Geo Pocket game, SNK vs Capcom Match of the Millennium. This game is right up my alley. 90s fighting games is one of my favorite periods of gaming, and combining that with the C64, my favorite computer of all time, is pure gold. I bought a Neo Geo Pocket Color in the late 90s based solely on the SNK vs Capcom, King of the Fighters R2, and so many other fighting games. It was the first time I actually played a handheld fighting game that I felt was actually just as good as an arcade or console fighters. This conversion has been several years in development, at this point by two guys, John Eggleton and Gianluca Alberico, and they truly did a marvelous job on this title. One-on-one versus games is not the C64's strong suit. Only a handful out of its entire library are actually any good, and I'm a massive fan of the system, so that's just an honest opinion. Well, we can add this one now to that small list of excellent versus gems. If you're not familiar with the series, it's basically two companies, Capcom and SNK, the biggest versus fighting companies at that time, coming together to pit some of their best characters against each other. I played the Dreamcast version of this game like a madman, and pitting Street Fighter, Fatal Fury, King of the Fighters, and even Darkstalker characters against each other was a fighting gamer's dream come true, and it delivered big time. The C64 version is a loose port of the Neo Geo Pocket version. It keeps the style, look, and charm, but also feels like its own individual game, so it's more like a remix or even an update. This game goes all out. You now have a whopping 16 characters to choose from, 3 more than the original Neo Geo Pocket version, every one of them keeping that excellent 2-color style and brilliant animation of the portable original. So many classic SNK and Capcom backgrounds have been recreated, and I love the attention to detail, with the small animations in the background to liven things up. The game gives you 3 play styles, story mode, versus, and tournament, each delivering something different and cool. Story features each character's own story mode with rivals, dialogue before and after matches, and is like a full arcade experience. Versus is just you against a friend in 2-player competitive action, and tournament is just awesome, where you get to pick a massive roster of characters and have a full-on tournament mode with friends who can swap joysticks and take turns, or just play by yourself, and is a great way to learn the ins and outs of the game if you want to practice. The real question here though is, how does it play? The simplest answer is excellently. Just like the Pocket version, all the moves are boiled down to 2 buttons. The C64 version gives you the option of playing as a 1-button or 2-button game. Both work extremely well, but I'd still recommend 2 if you can, and you definitely want to use some sort of gamepad through emulation or on your real 64, because a regular Commodore 64 controller just doesn't cut it, especially if you want to play this using all the moves and specials. This whole game is just a love letter to fighting games. There are so many more positives, such as the excellent SID interpretations of the music for every stage, 3 different bonus rounds, extra moves, and the cool super moves from the Alpha series is all in here, making all this the icing on the cake. Best of all, of course, is the game is free for you to download and to play on real hardware, the Mini Maxi, or just through emulation, and is an amazing piece of work by 2 guys that really put their passion and talents to work on this excellent game. Well done.
Number 3.
Leester was released on the Commodore 64 in January 2023 and is the first big game of the year for the old breadbox, put together by Knife Grinder, who did design, code, graphics, and sound, which is very impressive. What's even more crazy though is that this is his first C64 game, which is an amazing feat. Leester itself is an action platform Metroidvania style game with tons of action, platforming, collecting, and a huge space station to explore. The story goes the main computer AI of a space station orbiting Mars goes rogue and is now steering the station, which is filled with radioactive material right for Earth. You're an android on board and the only one that's able to stop it. The game takes its inspiration from a modern 2017 MSX game called Ghost, or Mini Ghost, and you can definitely see the similar stylings, although this is not a conversion of that game. Overall, it feels like an NES game when played, just with way better music, of course. As you search the station, you can pick up keycards that give you access to new areas. You can upgrade your weapon at a computer terminal and access the station's map to figure out where to go next. As you search the station, you can blast all enemies and and barrels to collect coins, which can be used to upgrade your weapons and regain your health. The station is packed with enemy robots, turrets, radioactive pools, sparks, and so much more. It's a deceptively simple game at first that, as it opens up, becomes more and more tricky. Special weapons and items can also be picked up, like shields, a screen-destroying bomb, and a laser blast that can shoot through walls, with items that include a wallet that can double your coin pickups, infrared goggles to see in the dark, and many more. It also employs a light RPG mechanic. With every drone killed, you gain 1 experience point, and once the bar maxes out, you get rewarded with more health. Your ultimate goal here is to regain control of the station and thus stop it from crashing into Earth. This is such a well-made and simple to play game, with spot-on controls that are very responsive and work perfectly with the one-button gameplay. The graphics are very detailed and colorful, with nice animation and a great attention to detail. And like I said earlier, the music is super cool, with tons of excellent fast-paced SID tracks to keep the action going, plus an impressive little intro and outro sequence. The game is both PAL and NTSC compatible, although from what I understand, the PAL speed is what it's meant to be played at. It's also both mini and maxi compatible, as well as real hardware. And even though it has over 60 plus rooms to explore, it shouldn't take you too long to complete, and that's perfectly fine by me, because the story and environments are such a lot of fun to explore. The game is also available for free or name your own price, with obviously links in the video description to check it out. So why not give the dev a few bucks and enjoy a new, wonderfully made Metroidvania style game on the old breadbox.
Number 2.
Rocky & Company was released in October of 2023 by Cytronic Software on the C64, another wonderfully crafted game by the team, Archon 64, made up of Stuart Collier on programming, Trevor Story on design and graphics, and Soul Cross on music. They have been a staple of the C64 modern gaming scene, giving us real high production releases for many years now, including Isle of the Cursed Prophet, the Soulless games, and Age of Heroes, plus so much more. Like all Archon 64 games, they take a classic C64 release, in this case Datasoft's 1985 game The Goonies, and use that as inspiration to make a game in a similar mold. Rocky & Co. is also a sequel to one of their older games, Rocky Memphis, The Legend of Atlantis, which features the same character, Rocky, the Indiana Jones style adventurer. That was a side-on action puzzle platformer, but just in a completely different style. In this one, you control 3 characters at the same time, switching to them on the fly to help solve all the puzzles and circumvent all the traps to make it past each stage. Your goal is to find the legendary Golden Condor statue. Each of the 12 stages are single screen affairs where you have to solve multiple puzzles to be able to get all 3 of your members of the party to the exit safely. Rocky has average speed, but he has a whip and is the only one that can kill creatures like bats and snakes. Spud is slow but can push and use heavy objects, and Jet is super fast and can jump far, which is useful for those rolling rock segments and platformer parts. Combining and switching between these 3 characters is how you solve the puzzles and traverse the traps. What I like is that you can play this game in normal mode where lives apply and will grant you an end sequence, but you can also play it in practice mode that lets you go through the entire game with infinite lives but you get no ending, and is a good way to suss out each stage. Also in this mode you don't have access to the secret bonus level. The team has done another wonderful great job here. The graphics are definitely in the Goonies style, just way more colorful and detailed. The music by Soul Cross is very fun and peppy, and the gameplay is very good. A few deaths were the result of the switching mechanic, which can be a little bit clunky, but after a while it becomes fairly intuitive. I'm glad I got to review this game though a good few weeks after its initial release, as a multitude of fixes and updates were added by Mike Robertson, including multiple different file formats to work on all different emulators, saving to a physical cartridge, and the option for multi-button controllers, allowing you to simply use a button to switch characters. If you're watching this video and downloading it later, just make sure you get the latest version. As per usual with Archon games, it's both NTSC and PAL compatible, works on all emulators including the Mini and the Maxi, and I'll leave links in the video description to purchase the game from Cytronic in both digital and full box cartridge format. It's another top quality Archon production, and as per usual I'm always waiting eagerly to see what they're gonna put out next. Okay, so we're going to stop this video briefly. I just want to show a bunch of my honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. This year was another stellar display for the old bread box. All these games are also well worth checking out. Castle Shadowgate is an excellent remake of the NES version of this Arcom classic adventure game done by Donnie Russell and free for all to enjoy. Dr. Maria is a fun little take on Nintendo's Dr. Mario with simple, fun and addictive Tetris-style gameplay. Roguebot is a turn-based roguelike dungeon crawler card game. It's a lot of elements, and it works pretty well, and is another unique experience from Dr. Mortal Wombat. Also check out his version of the mobile game Zuma on the C64. Polar Bear in Space got an enhanced version this year, making this shooter platformer even better. It's simply not in my top 10 because the game originally came out a few years earlier. Cursed Tomb is an excellent well-designed puzzle game by Protovision, well worth checking out, and I got a full review for this game on my channel. Quasimodo's Christmas Caper by RWX Design is a cute, good-looking single-screen platformer style game that I only recently discovered and have been enjoying. Le Mans 2023 is an update of the original racer from 1982 with slightly updated graphics, a gear shift system, and 3 cars to choose from. Last Defender by LC Games is a variation on the arcade game Pang, and if it had a big soundtrack and a few simple weapons upgrades, it could have been an absolute classic. Ad Astra is a slow-paced space exploration trading game that's a real slow burn if you got a lot of time to spare. Fizz is a pretty clever puzzle game from first-time C64 game maker Andy Dorman, and also sports a really good 2-player mode. Dig Dug Revival is an unofficial update of the arcade conversion, this one done by LC Games, adding randomized levels, better graphics, and other small features. Peninsula is a strategy game by Digital Monastery and feels like a combination of Civilization and SimCity. GP Cars is a great top-down racer from LHS. Also check out my full review for this game on the channel. Vampire Vengeance is a port of a Spectrum game and is a fun, simple, single-screen style action platformer that's very enjoyable to play. Burger Time is a very good unofficial port by Arlosoft of this Data East classic. It's easily the best version of this game available on the C64. Bill and Ted's Excellent Game Boy Adventure is a port of a 1991 Game Boy game and is a pretty faithful to that action platformer. Evil Dungeon is a traditional early 80s in style looking Petsky dungeon crawler that also received a sequel later in the year. Penguin Tower is a recently released unfinished game from the 1990s, much in the Bomberman mold, that was finally completed in November of this year. Psst is another unofficial Ultimate game from 1983 that's finally been released on the C64 for the first time. And there are many more games out there to discover. This was simply only a small sampling. And now let's check out my personal favorite Commodore 64 game for 2023.
And number 1 is...
A Pig's Quest was released in February of 2023 by Piggy 18 Team on the Commodore 64. This game has been in development for many years now and is probably one of the most anticipated C64 releases of the year, with the team sticking to their when it's ready philosophy when approaching the making of this game. Over the years, Antonio has worked on a host of exceptional Commodore games, including my choice for C64 Game of the Year in 2019, La Abby d'Amour, as well as Planet Golf, Monstro Giganto, Boxy Moxie, and so many others, so check out his C64 back catalog, you won't be disappointed. And now let's check out the story of the game, which puts you in the role of Frank Further, a pig from the village of Porkville. There are 4 statues of wellness, kinda like the Shankara stones from the Temple of Doom, and they were stolen, sending the village into a state of discontent and numbness. Frank one day stumbles upon a mysterious cave close to his village, and thus kickstarts his adventure, or his Pig's Quest. The backstory is all illustrated wonderfully by graphics artist Morissette in the game's beautiful manual, which will be included in the digital version as a PDF and in its original physical form for the game's boxed release. As you can no doubt tell, the game can be best described as a platform action adventure game, which invokes strong vibes of Capcom's Ghosts and Goblins arcade, but it's way more than that on so many levels. Each of the massive 5 stages offer their own set of challenges in terms of action and puzzles. You can pick up a variety of weapons from treasure chests scattered throughout the lands, although you'll need keys to open them, which are placed all about to find. Some are hidden well and requiring lots of exploration to find those little secret areas. Once opened, you could receive one of 4 weapons, including a variety of swords and a Mjolnir-styled hammer, each with their own strength and rate of fire. Armor is also a vital element of the game, Ghosts and Goblins style, with various sets to find to protect you from incoming fire. Too many hits hits and they'll eventually wear out, leaving you with just your health bar unprotected. The puzzles are quite fun to figure out, mostly involving throwing a switch or collecting an object to open a gate, etc, etc, but make you search the levels and pay a lot more attention to the objects to find out the tricks, and are not annoying in any sort of way. There are some nice modern touches also in the menu system at the bottom of the screen, including a small energy bar of whatever enemy you're currently blasting at, which is very useful when fighting those bosses, letting you know if you're actually doing some damage or not. And I also like the little text scroll which gives you Frank's thoughts and conveys story elements that way, as well as providing hints on various areas to help you along the adventure. And don't be too stressed out by that timer in the corner. I found that it was generally pretty generous for most levels, also with the game providing 3 levels of difficulty in the beginning, giving everyone a fighting chance. The graphics are absolutely stunning on so many levels, with the attention to detail being astonishing, and the variety from level to level truly making it feel like a grand adventure, with the locations feeling like characters themselves. The large desert landscapes, underground caves and structures, gorgeous weather effects, day and night settings. It's truly one of the most amazing looking C64 games out there. The variety of the enemies is also crazy, each level not simply recycling henchmen, but getting its own unique set based on that level. And I really love the little graphical ode thrown in referencing Antonio's La Vie de Mort belfry sequence, which is pretty funny. One can only imagine what people would have thought of this game if it was released in 1986. Morissette has truly delivered perfection in C64 form, not only in terms of settings, but also the animation is absolutely top notch. The sound is also in a league of its own, with Aldo and Gaetano Cuomo providing not only atmospheric tunes, but a full soundtrack's worth of multiple sets per level, changing as the atmosphere progresses. It's a full-on Last Ninja style experience, and not just simply 2 tracks alternating between levels. Overall, A Pig's Quest is stunning. Its gameplay is tight, responsive, and pitch perfect. The levels of difficulty making it appealing to both newbies and veterans alike. The setting, graphics, and overall atmosphere make it stand shoulders above many C64 games of recent years. And let me just say that the recent years have been very, very good. The game is playable on a real C64, the Mini, the Maxi, and VAS, and is both NTSC and PAL compatible, although Antonio says it was designed in PAL format, so if you're playing on an emulated device, I'd suggest using PAL settings for optimal performance as they were intended to run. So check out the full physical version available from Protovision, and the digital version as well. And please check out my full review for this game, including an interview with Antonio Savona himself, in my rapid fire section, and enjoy a truly remarkable game on the Commodore 64. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. And if you can please like and subscribe, they'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.